It wasn't a dream. It's real. The Los Angeles Dodgers are World Series champions. And we got a lot of great stories coming out from some guys that had some dog in them. So we'll talk about it. Let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. You can also find us in the top 200 sports podcasts on iTunes. So, shout out to you guys for making that happen. And Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans. We've covered the team for a decade now. We've done this podcast for 6 seasons now. We are now 2-time World Series champion podcasters. So, shout out to us for that. And, we're here to talk Dodgers and continue to bask in the glow that is being a fan of a team that is World Series champions. Yeah, Jeff, I don't know. It's obviously I had a busy night and then, no sleep, straight to the airport, flew back home. And then I slept throughout most of the day. So I didn't get to maybe enjoy it fully during the day, but I definitely got to enjoy it every other time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely different when, like for you, it's your job. You got to be there, which is awesome. You got paid to be at the games, but also you didn't get to wear your Dodgers gear and you didn't get to scream and cry like the rest of us did, at least on the outside. And, I got to enjoy it with my family, but also then my phone rang and it was a radio station wanting to talk about it. And, it's like, it's a different experience, but today was kind of nice to just, okay, today I'm just a Dodger fan and relive. I actually watched the replay of the game on MLB Network tonight because I love how much less stressful games are when you know what's going to happen. And it's just so much fun being a World Series champion. I mean, we know we aren't World Series champions, but you guys know what we mean, the Dodgers don't exist without all of us. And so I don't use the word we when I'm talking about the team, but when I say we are World Series champions, I'm talking about the Dodger fans. We're World Series champion fans, and it's a wonderful feeling. And maybe the best feeling, Vince, is that you and I can go back to doing podcasts 5 days a week. I just counted. This is our 29th episode this month. There are 31 days in October. This is our 29th episode of the month. Just crazy. I'm looking forward to going back to like 20 to 22 episodes a month,
Yeah, not too bad. And it was obviously a whirlwind kind of being there, seeing in real time Yankee fans kind of combust in that 5th inning and then just kind of, try to keep the faith. But I think they all kind of knew like, oh, this game's not going to go the way we want it to. You didn't feel a very big sense of confidence. But I will say, like, for me, when I go to these games, obviously, I have to be impartial and, I don't get to enjoy the game fully. And there's even times where I'll go back and rewatch the game just because there's a lot of things I miss as I'm like roaming around or taking videos or doing other stuff. And, this game is definitely one I'm going to go back and watch when I get a chance. But yeah, to kind of be there and experience it. And, even though, don't get to cheer, but as I was filming the final out, like definitely felt super emotional. And then, then I have to worry about doing all the other stuff. But, being in the locker room was cool just because you get to see like, and especially they'll have like having been in it after every round, you can see how it builds up. Like after the DS, that it was an exhausting series. They had to play a couple days later. By the time they let media in there, most of the major celebrating had been done other than, my favorite Kevin Kiermaier, who was the star of all the shows. And then in the CS, they had a week off. They knew it, a little bit more celebration, definitely got more Shohei in there and things like that. But then yesterday, like everyone was in there, and for a decent amount of time before they actually, went out and saw their family and talked to the Dodgers fans and all that stuff. Yeah, so yeah, definitely got some TV time apparently on Fox. I don't know about sports in LA, but I definitely got some TV time on Fox, and people are like, "Oh, sure, you're walking around not knowing." I was like, I honestly, there was so much going on, and my trying to make sure my phone doesn't get all too wet, and I can still push the buttons and everything else. It was it was cool, and being there was great. I still, in 2020, had the chance to go watch the clinching game as a fan, and I decided not to because I wanted to just watch it with my family and everyone. And sometimes I still feel that way, but obviously, this was a little bit sweeter, and I feel like the Dodgers are going to win more, and maybe one of those I will stay home.
Yeah, that's the way I had that same opportunity in 2020. I had, I could have gone to New York. I was invited to go to New York for these games, so I could have been there. But yeah, being there here with my family, like if I could take my whole family to the game, absolutely. But being with my family is what I want to do. I've been thinking about this from the Yankees perspective, and just I was thinking about, I coached my son's city league team, just a Colt League team, and it was just for fun. We put this team together. It was my son and a bunch of his buddies from his high school wrestling team. Like 10 of the 13 players were from his wrestling team. And, some of them were okay at baseball. Some of them weren't. We had 4 state champion wrestlers, but not a great baseball team, but we had fun. But there was one game that we played where we were up. We had the lead. It's bases loaded, 2 outs, and there was a strike 3 in the dirt, and the catcher, didn't even get away from it. It was just in the dirt. He caught it cleanly, just bounced. And I'm standing 15 feet from him in the dugout, and I yelled, "Step on the plate, step on the plate, step on the plate." And he made eye contact with me and then threw the ball into right field. And all 3 runners scored, and we ended up losing that game by 1 run. This is a game that didn't matter at all. I could not care less. And yet I had a bad dream that night about this kid just stepping on, like, why didn't you just step on the plate? Now picture that, but it's the World Series and the game you get eliminated, and you're Aaron Judge, and you make the only error you made in the year 2024, and it leads to 5 runs. Or you're Garrett Cole, and the one time you forget to cover first base, it leads to 5 runs. Like just those little things. I can't even imagine how they must be feeling right now. And maybe it makes it feel better to them knowing it was game 5. Look, they were going to lose the World Series one way or the other anyway. Even if they won this game, they were going to lose one of the next 2 games. They weren't going to win the World Series. Probably would have been a lot worse if it had been game 7. But man, I just can't even imagine like knowing I directly cost my team the clinching game.
Yeah, and I mean, Judge said it after the game, like he said he's going to basically, take this with him forever. Anthony Volpe said the same thing. This is going to linger on forever. And you hear there's guys that have won the World Series multiple times, and they'll say, I remember the ones we lost more than the ones we won. And that, that's just nature of what type of competitor you are. Like there's different ways of being a competitor. And, some people hate losing more than they love winning. And some people just love winning overall. And there's no real bad way to go about it. But it was, like I said, because in New York, like game 3, Derek Jeter threw out the first pitch, and it was, pretty hype in there. And then Fat Joe performed, and it died. And then Freddie Freeman hit a 2-run homer, and it was dead the whole time. Then game 4, I felt like the fans were in it, but they weren't necessarily believing, oh, we had a chance to win. And yeah, they cheered, and you just didn't. It was like, oh man, I wanted a legitimate New York postseason game. And for the first 5 innings of game 5, that's how it felt. The fans were in it. You could tell that they were starting to get that hope and if we win today, now we go to game 6 and, maybe something happens there. And then you go to game 7 and, kind of how we've built out paths on this show before when the Dodgers are down, you could see that those wheels turning in their head. And then for it to all just kind of melt down and it's not like it was, hit, home run. And it was air and then misplay and then air and then a hit and then the double off the wall. And then now it's tied. And that your bullpen's tired, and the Dodgers, well, at that point, their bullpen was kind of depleted in sense of trying to count outs and what they were going to do. But you just had a sense of that game ended there in the 5th inning, regardless of what else happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Dodgers did have 4 hits in that inning, including 3 legitimate ones, not counting Mookie's infield single. But, even 4 hits in an inning shouldn't cost you a 5-run lead like it did. So, hey, we'll take it, and the Dodgers capitalized on it. So,
yeah. All right. Well, there is actually things to talk about that we got from. There's tons more. I still need to read about all the interviews and stuff people done, but we got some big news about Freddie Freeman that none of us knew. So we're going to talk about that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle all the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So go to FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your one of the listens of your day. First listen, last listen, any part of the listen. We appreciate you. Like I said, we've had a good month. We've had a lot of episodes. And, we all got rewarded by the Dodgers in this sense. It's not just us. So we appreciate you, everybody listening, everyone that's listened all month long. If you picked up in October, if you've been in every day or for multiple years, we appreciate you all nonetheless. And there's other things you can check out. Locked On Sports Today, Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. There won't be any more Locked On Dodgers postcasts with host Pete Fox as there are no games on. But, maybe he'll find his way into one of our episodes over his offseason. So him and Jeff can argue about fun stuff. You never know. But, Jeff, we got a lot of articles from a lot of different places. And one of them, Jeff Passan wrote. And it was about Freddie Freeman and kind of, the main thing that he put out on the tweet was like, Dad, I'm never going to stop. And talking to his dad about why. And we thought it was about the ankle, and then you read the article, and it turned out that a couple of days before the postseason started, when Freddie Freeman was already dealing with the bad ankle, he messed himself up pretty bad. He had some rib cartilage. What was the exact?
Fractured rib cartilage.
Yeah, fractured rib cartilage.
Yeah. They said that if it had been in the regular season, he would have been out 2 or 3 months with his injury. Instead, he missed, 2 games after that? Just ridiculous. And you're reading this, and all I could do was think about last year or 2 years ago when Dylan Hernandez wrote that article questioning Freddie's toughness because he was sad about leaving Atlanta. And it's like the toughness that Freddie Freeman showed. And, all postseason long, like when he would be interviewed, he'd talk about the 3 or 4 hours of treatment every day. And I kept having this, I'm like, what can you do on an ankle for 3 or 4 hours? And now it makes a whole lot more sense. The ankle almost was just a red herring. The article says that every time Freddie swung and missed, it hurt and he would grimace, and everybody just assumed it was the ankle. And, the broadcaster would say, oh man, that ankle's really hurting him, and turns out it wasn't the ankle wasn't feeling great, but it was something so much more serious. And that's why he was bad the first 2 series, but he still made his impact shown a couple times. And then it was between the NLCS and the World Series in those 4 days off that he had a breakthrough in the batting cage and figured out changing his approach, actually changing his stance a little bit, helped him to not hurt as much. And he was able to tap into that power, and almost like all 4 of his home runs in the World Series were pulled. And Freddie is famously an opposite field guy, and he will sometimes turn on a ball and pull it. But that was basically what he could do. And it made so much sense that the Dodgers were just basically hiding this injury. Like nobody knew. And it's so funny how good the Dodgers are at keeping secrets, because the whole team knew, people were obviously there when Freddie literally collapsed in the batting cage when he hurt himself. People knew about this. Nobody outside knew. The Yankees didn't know. And so, Nestor Cortez had no idea that throwing an inside fastball was the worst thing he could possibly do, because that was the pitch that Freddie's new swing was 100% designed to hit. Just crazy. And for him to do this, and you read the quotes, his dad telling him, you need to stop. And him looking at his dad like he was crazy, said, I'm not going to stop. And it talks about when he was 15 years old, got hit on the wrist with a pitch and broke his wrist but he was supposed to play on the Team USA 16U team. So he just didn't tell anybody about the broken wrist because he didn't want to miss playing. Like, just he's like Superman because he looks like nice, unassuming Clark Kent. And then he goes in a phone booth and becomes Freddie freaking Freeman, and like, just, you have no idea that we knew he was going through stuff. We had no idea how much stuff he was going through. Makes his MVP performance even that much more impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Because, he had the finger still. The finger, I'm sure, still had an issue of it. He had the ankle, even though his son was doing better, that still got to weigh on his mind. And now, the broken rib cartilage, which, just sounds, it's one of those where everyone's probably like hurt their rib or somehow. And then when you laugh or when you sneeze or, it hurts and you're like, oh man, this is the worst pain ever. And Freddie was playing baseball on that pain. And it makes sense why in the NLCS he struggled and why you were like, the first round, Freddie was still getting base hits, no power. And we're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And then the CS, he wasn't hitting and he didn't have any power. And you're like, oh man. And then, when Freddie came, when he came up to the plate with bases loaded in that game 1 of the World Series, and I was like, okay, well, Freddie will poke a single and will at the very least tie it and maybe win it, because that's all I was expecting, because we hadn't seen anything from him that would tell me that he was going to hit the ball over a wall and he would have that kind of power. And yeah, he ended up doing it 4 more times in the series. Had a big, base hit against Garrett Cole there to keep that inning going after the misplay at first base. And yeah, it just, you talk about legend, you talk about everything else, and we're going to talk about Walker Buehler next, but it was for every, not to place anything on it, but like for every, Jack Flaherty was sick after a bad performance, there was this, okay, Freddie Freeman had something way more than we knew. And, they didn't bring it up. And the fact that it came up now doesn't matter because they won. So,
yeah. And I heard Mookie Betts talking about just how basically Freddie playing hurt basically inspired the whole team in the, hey, no excuses kind of way. Like, I don't care if you're sore. I don't care, and Mookie even said that when Shohei got hurt, Shohei's mindset was, well, Freddie's been playing through worse than this, so let's get her done, and it's huge. My one worry is that Freddie literally shortened his career for this. And I think it's a trade-off he would make again, because you only get so many chances to win the World Series. And I think Freddie Freeman is already a Hall of Famer. And I think that this performance helps with that. Postseason performance doesn't often play a part, but winning World Series MVP with broken fingers and sprained ankle and broken rib cartilage, like if that doesn't get you in the Hall of Fame, I don't know what will, especially factor in his whole career. And so, but I would guess that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a down year next year, because he's going to have to spend this whole offseason basically rehabbing multiple injuries. And, hopefully he just comes back and, he takes all the offseason off and comes back fresh and just dominates next year. But whatever it is, Dodgers are World Series champions. He's the World Series MVP. And so the sacrifice was worth it.
Yeah. And, there's probably at some point this offseason, the conversation to be had of, what can Freddie do with the Dodgers that changes a potential Hall of Fame pack from for sure a Braves hat to maybe no logo on the hat, or I don't know if, there might be enough for a Dodger to get the Dodger logo on there. But, Mookie's got 2 with the Dodgers now. Like, when he goes into it, he'll be, with Dodgers. And there's a lot of guys that have, built some legacies on that. And on this postseason specifically, Walker Buehler is one of those guys. We're going to talk about him next. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. MLB postseason's over, but there's still plenty of things going on. There's a lot of sports, a lot of theater, a lot of concerts, a lot more you can do with all your free time now that the Dodgers aren't playing. And Game Time is here to help you get tickets to all those events because they got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So check out the Game Time app, download it, and check out all the features they got. One of the best features is, if you're going somewhere you've never been before, the view from your seat. I'm someone that not very particular about where I sit, but I do like to know what view I'm gonna have, and Game Time has that covered for you. Another one is you never want buyer's remorse, where you buy something and then you find something cheaper later. Well, Game Time helps out there because they have the lowest price guarantee. Because if you find tickets in your same section and row for cheaper, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you don't have to worry about all that. So check out Game Time, download the app today, and take the guesswork out of buying tickets and more with Game Time Picks. Download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of your listens of the day. I want to thank you for being an everydayer if you are one. Everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. Even though there's been a lot of you here with us in the month of October, and we appreciate you, and we hope that you stay everydayers throughout, because there's going to be, we're going to have at least 2-3 weeks of stuff to talk about just from everything coming out from the World Series and, what it means for different people and all that type of stuff. And then it'll be free agency, and, we'll get to talk about that kind of fun stuff and all that. There's a lot to get
Ohtani
into.
winning MVP.
Yeah, there's still so much to get into. So, just because the postseason's over doesn't mean your time with us has to be over. We'd appreciate it if you do that. And you can still go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers Insider. We're going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. We'll keep you updated with the Dodgers throughout the offseason and more. So make sure to go check that out. And Jeff, Walker Buehler closed out Game 5 of the World Series. He was not expected to pitch until Game 7, a potential Game 7 of the World Series. And, the Dodgers scored 5 runs in that fifth. And in the bottom of the fifth, I'm counting, the Dodgers need 15 outs, and they have Alex Vesia, Brusdar Graterol, and Blake Trinan, who for sure can throw. And then they have Daniel Hudson and maybe Ben Kasperius that could throw if they absolutely needed to. And, you try to think well, what's going on? And then we kind of got a little bit of that answer before the game. As the game kept going, because Walker Buehler at one point walked out to the bullpen, and there's a lot of articles written about it and how we got out there, and Brent Honeywell and Joe Kelly were like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm just here to kick it with you and Joe." And a guy who, I sent a clip, and you had already seen it, but I didn't watch a lot of the postseason stuff where, I asked Walker Buehler how he feels or whatever, and he said I thought I was going to get cut from this team, and we both said that we were at points where we were done with Walker Buehler and the experiment, at least for the rest of this season. And by necessity, because of injuries, he had to stay in there. And even when we got into the postseason, we were like, okay, well, Buehler hasn't shown enough to be okay, he's going to be good. But October Walker Buehler, we were banking on it. And we got that a little bit in the San Diego series, didn't get helped out by the defense. And then after that, in the CS and World Series, we got that Walker Buehler, maybe not the 6-7 innings of Walker Buehler pass, but we got the 4 or 5 solid innings, shutout innings that we are used to seeing from Walker Buehler. And then for him to come out and close it and not even give the Yankees a dash of hope. He got 2 strikeouts, and, had a lot to say after it about winning this year, about, the 2020 title being, not that it wasn't legitimate, but people can't say anything now. And, I think, I don't remember if I read this somewhere or someone told me, they asked Buehler about Verdugo being the last out, and he said he didn't really care, but also he did care a little bit. So
yeah. Doogie has run his mouth a little bit. It was definitely fun. I saw a thing that I hadn't made the connection that the 3 last outs of the series were Fernando Tatis Jr., Francisco Alvarez, and Alex Verdugo, all 3 of whom had attitudes and tried to start things with the Dodgers. In their respective series, they all got to make the last out of the series. So that's fun. Buehler, the part of that article talking about Clayton Kershaw stopping Buehler on his way down and give him a hug, tell him I love you. And, Kershaw is the one guy in that dugout who knew what was about to happen, because Kershaw is the one who's actually done that. I'm sure Earl Hershiser was sitting in the Sportsnet LA studios feeling the same way, because he's another guy who has done that, a starting pitcher who has to, by necessity. It's so funny, all the different parallels to so many previous teams. And, Blake Trinan played the Kenley Jansen role And then Walker Buehler played the Clayton Kershaw role. And the difference is this was a World Series. This was, not an NLDS, which, was important. And that Game 5 of that NLDS in 2016 is something that none of us will ever forget. Clayton Kershaw coming out. It's huge. This team won the World Series. Everything is magnified when you win the World Series. And so this is the stuff of legends. And it is, when you think about the fact, obviously Buehler, he probably increased his free agent stock by coming out and doing that. But it was also a huge risk to his free agency. Like coming out and say, okay, I'm on 2 days rest or 1 day rest. I pitched 2 days ago and I'm going to come out and pitch in a meaningful game and throw 97 miles an hour. Like he could have hurt himself. He could have severely damaged his free agency costs. But again, just like with Freddie Freeman, it was, I don't care. This is my chance to win a World Series. Another thing I was thinking about, like how much of a team this is. The fact that, Daniel Hudson announced after the game that he's retiring and all the tweets about him going out on top. What Daniel Hudson actually did was be the losing pitcher in the only game the Dodgers lost, gave up a grand slam, was the losing pitcher. But because the team won, he's going out on top. And there's no question about that. I don't mean that as a knock on him. That's like, this is a team, Daniel Hudson is a World Series champ. Walker Buehler is a World Series champ. Freddie Freeman's a World Series champ. And, they all did what they needed to do. And Daniel Hudson, was talking about, he was warming up in the bullpen. He was going to be the next one in if this game had gone to extra innings or if Buehler couldn't get through the inning or whatever. And Hudson said, my arm would have blown out if I had come in the game. I was running on fumes. My arm, I am done. But he didn't say, sorry, doc, I'm not available. He said, all right, let's warm up. It's a team thing. Everybody on this team was all in. And especially for a Game 5, like they could have easily said, you know what, we've got 2 more games. Let's just go with Kasperius and, hope we can hold on, but not, but they didn't. They're like, no, let's win this thing now. Let's carry a trophy home on our plane.
If Shohei Ohtani hadn't hurt his shoulder, man, I would have been thinking so much about, are we going to see Ohtani in the 9th? But Walker Buehler being that guy, it's great. It's a perfect culmination for him. If that does end up being the last pitch he throws as a Dodger, it's forever remembered now. And if it's not, we'll talk obviously in future episodes about should the Dodgers bring him back. Is that something that's viable? But, just seeing how much he loves to win, how much he loves the Dodgers. And, he's had a couple Instagram posts since the series ended and, saying he hasn't slept. He loves this city, MFN city. He loves this team. And I'm just hoping that everyone hydrates and has something to eat before they hop on those double-decker buses at the parade tomorrow because it might get a little bit active for sure for some of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we should move on to our last topic since we just spent so much time on Freddie and Buehler, huh?
Yeah, last topic, and it might push into another episode, but the trade deadline, as some people were excited about it. Some people weren't excited about it. Some people were just like, okay, the Dodgers address needs, maybe not top flight. But at the end of the day, they don't win the World Series without, those guys. Kevin Kiermaier, what was not necessarily a move that they made for helping this team and win the World Series. It was just getting them through the rest of the regular season. And, he ended up being a fun personality to have on the team. But Jack Flaherty, regardless of the, struggling in Game 5, they don't get to these points without his Game 1 start, and they don't get to this point with his NLCS game start and all that type of stuff. And Michael Kopech holding it down, being part of that bullpen, being part of the Dogs, and coming in the 3rd inning, coming in the starting the game, coming in the 9th inning, like doing every role imaginable. And then Tommy Edman, obviously, not knowing he hadn't played the entire season to that point, still didn't play right away when the Dodgers traded for him. And being NLCS MVP and being, the only other guy that really hit in the World Series beyond Freddie Freeman, there's times where, things are going to work out. There's times where you don't. And all that being traded for, the Dodgers didn't really give up anything. No offense to Miguel Vargas, but nothing of like major value was really given up.
Yeah, I feel like somebody who the Dodgers traded is going to have to win like multiple MVPs for the Dodgers to ever even consider possibly regretting any of these trades. These were just outstanding trades addressed specific areas of need in ways like this wasn't just, oh, we need a utility guy. Tommy Edman's a utility guy. Let's go get him. It was Tommy Edman, the person, Tommy Edman, the contact hitter, Tommy Edman, the right-handed slugger, like all these things, the defensive whiz at multiple positions, all those things. Like it wasn't, let's go get somebody. Oh, Tommy Edman's available. It was, we want Tommy Edman. And same with Kopech. It was, Michael Kopech has stuff. We know what to do with stuff. Let's go get him. And Jack Flaherty, it was, we need a starting pitcher. Jack Flaherty is the best starting pitcher available. Let's go get him. And like you said, yeah, it would have been so perfect picture, storybook ending if Jack Flaherty had thrown a shutout in game 5. Instead, he got lit up and got knocked out of the game. So what? He did in game 1. He kept them in the game to set up Freddie Freeman's grand slam. In this game, the Dodgers won the game. That wasn't on Flaherty at all. But guess what? He's a World Series champion. And like you said, they don't get there without him. The Dodgers have 3 starting pitchers. Jack Flaherty's one of them. Without him, they would have been doing 2 bullpen games every 4 days. Like there's just, everything about what Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes did at the trade deadline was just spot on, picture perfect.
Yeah, and in a year where there wasn't as many big time trades, so you did have to get a little bit creative. And Tommy Edman, they mentioned, was a guy that they've had on the radar for a while. And Jack Flaherty obviously made sense just because he was the best guy traded in. Kopech was a diamond in, diamond in the rough, if you want to call the White Sox rough, maybe a little bit beyond rough, but it was all things that they needed. It maybe wasn't the names, but again, there wasn't a lot of names available at the time that were going to make that. There was no premier shortstop to trade for at the deadline. There wasn't a Trey Turner to go get at the deadline, but they got Tommy Edman. And honestly, obviously, Tommy Edman did a little bit more than Trey Turner did in his time with the Dodgers in October. So,
yep.
Yeah, there's so much more to talk about, and we will talk more about it. The parade is on Friday morning. That will lead into an event at Dodger Stadium. I've always wanted to be part of a parade, so I'm going to the parade as a fan. I'm not doing any media stuff tomorrow, even though I would have had a chance to cover the parade or the Dodger Stadium event. But, I'm going to go be in the mix with the fans at the parade, and I'm sure we'll have stuff to talk about that. And there's just still so much stuff to talk about this postseason. And as we get more stories, or as Jeff and I read more articles and everything else, there's so much more to get into that the Dodgers are going to give us a lot to talk about over the next month. So.
Absolutely. And we don't have to do any episodes on the weekend. We are done for the week.
Exactly. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of your listens of the day. We appreciate you. We've had a great October, and we hope to push that into a great November. You can check out Locked On Sports Today, Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. You can find, or you can be on the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. Get text directly from us with any updates on the Dodgers throughout the offseason. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter as NightDog. I'm at Vincents91. You can DM us with any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, or if you're at home, tell your smart device by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you Sunday night.